Great. So it looks like we have the majority of the participants on the call. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kaylee Gattins, and I have the honor of being a part of the SUPERCLUSTER team as Director of Communications. I would like to welcome everyone on the line today who is already a member or associate of the SUPERCLUSTER, and welcome all of those who are joining us today for the first time. As a reminder, the call will be recorded for playback and to share with those who are unable to attend. And so just a quick housekeeping item, and it looks like the most of you are on mute, but just please keep your lines on mute to avoid any feedback. And to kick things off, as the majority of our SUPERCLUSTER team is based in Vancouver, BC, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering virtually on the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And to set the stage for our town hall today, here's an overview of what we will be covering. And just before I hand things off to Bill Tam, our co-founder and chief operating officer of the SUPERCLUSTER, someone I'm sure many of you know, our goal is to have this to be a very engaging and informative session. So if at any time you have questions during the call, we please ask you to type them into the chat box. And as questions come in, we'll pause periodically to have Bill answer them in queue. And I'll be reaching out to each question in the chat to call on your name and ask you to unmute yourself. So with that, over to you, Bill.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining today. I see we have a great collection of members that I'd like to welcome to this call. There's lots of new associates, and we have a whole variety of people that are participating today. I'll just apologize up front that I think we are all going to be a bit challenged with bandwidth. So if for whatever reason I start to cut out, Kaylee will give me the signal and I will cut off. A couple of years ago. Say hello, Greg. Okay. Well, everyone can kind of see that he waved. And I think what I might do is just share the screen so that I can go through a little bit of the history and provide for those who are joining for the first time an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the SUPERCLUSTER. So let me kind of go here. All right. So as Kaylee mentioned, we'd like to provide a bit of an overview for the folks who are new to the SUPERCLUSTER. I think for those of you who have been through a number of our different sort of information sessions or our existing, welcome back and thanks for joining. I've themed to a whole new level. So, you know, we're obviously in some pretty challenging times now, but that doesn't mean that we can't at least pretend that we're playing outside. And having said that, I do recognize that these are unprecedented times. And so on behalf of all of us at the Digital SUPERCLUSTER, we hope that everyone on this call, all of the people that you work with, all of your family, and all the people that are part of your lives are safe. And we are doing everything that we can to be supportive in the current environment. So where I'd like to go today is just maybe give a bit of a background on the SUPERCLUSTER, especially for those who are new to this, a little bit on how to get engaged. I'm going to call upon some of our existing members, and I know we've got a few of them on the call today. So just a little warning, I think if Bell is on the line, if Matt Murdoch is on the line, a few other folks like Carl Pringle, if you're on the line, I might call out to you guys to maybe share a little bit of your experiences as we get to the end about what makes for a successful project. But I do want to cover what it means to get engaged if you're new to the SUPERCLUSTER, maybe a quick rundown on what we've invested in so far, maybe a sense as to the direction that we're trying to drive towards as a collective, as a consortium of sort of companies that are part of the SUPERCLUSTER, and then give an overview of what we're doing specific to COVID-19. And I think that is probably an area of interest for many of you that are on the call today. And then we'll try to leave lots of time for Q&A. As Kaylee had mentioned, you know, the goal here is to give you an opportunity to ask questions. So please make use of the chat window that's on the part of the Zoom call here, and Kaylee will help to moderate and ensure that we get to as many, if not all, of the questions that we've got from you. So maybe where I can start is to talk a little bit about where the supercluster started from. Certainly, we feel quite honored to be leading this initiative. I think Greg Cause and I spent many hours back in 2016 sort of envisioning how we could bring the community, not only in BC, but across the country together in these sort of collaboration exercises. You know, the principles of the supercluster are really based on the notion of having open collaboration and to build strength through the diversity of the members that we have engaged. And that is all constituted in a set of values and a charter of values, in fact, and a code of conduct that we ask every member, every participant in the supercluster to undertake with us. So for those of you who have signed up as associates, or those of you who are members, you're probably very familiar with that charter of values. And it is the commitment that we have not only within our organization, but to one another. Where this all started, of course, was that we had 29 original members who in 2018 signed on with us. And that was the foundation of getting the supercluster up and running. All of the constating documents, not only the charter of values, but the way in which the supercluster is run is all designed by members for members. And as a result, that organic nature of it is, I think, what's allowed us to be successful. Now that initial 29 has grown to more than 500 organizations that are now part of the supercluster. And we now have almost 50 sort of full members from that original base of 29. I'll talk a little bit about what that actually means. I think, why don't I kind of skip to the next slide, which kind of talks a little bit about the diversity of the organizations that are part of this and what we're really trying to achieve. The goal here is that, especially as we emerge into this new digital 4.0 era, it's quite clear that organizations can't compete at scale on their own. The opportunity is to actually leverage the diversity of expertise and to have what we call radical collaboration exercises to bring together the best experiences to really lead new research and development opportunities that no single organization could have achieved on its own. And so a lot of this is predicated on bringing sort of the best and brightest in making innovation more of a team sport than an individual sport. And with that in mind, I think one of the key things for those of you who are new to the supercluster is a bit of an orientation as to how to get engaged. You know, by statute, what we've set up for this supercluster, it is a nonprofit organization. It is funded by members and also contributions from the Government of Canada and the Government of BC. And the membership is open to all Canadian organizations. We also have multinational organizations that are part of our membership. We have international organizations that are part of it. But really what we're trying to drive is true collaborative R&D that happens in Canada. Now, the starting point for the journey in getting engaged with the supercluster starts with joining as an associate, which everyone can do for free. It's for organizations, and they can join right on our website. You know, what the goal there is then to get an orientation on how to explore collaboration opportunities. We have a member resource portal where you can discover other members, the projects that are underway, and look for ways to engage in that conversation. We have an ideation hub to try to help to collate the ideas that are being worked on. And for the most part, most of our collaborations have been done in person. Obviously, the current environment is going to lend itself to new ways of experimenting with how we do collaboration. And we hope that sessions like this and Zoom calls like this will just be a pathway as to how we're going to do more of that in the future. Now, ultimately, associates and members, the goal is to develop and propose projects that are really centered around things that you want to achieve as organizations or as companies, but also align with our program areas. And I'll get into more details as to what our program areas are. Obviously, the key theme for us is digital technologies and looking for ways that digital technology can help in the transformation of a whole host of different business processes, industries, and sectors. And the way that we try to construct this is to give a path for all associates that join to upgrade to full membership when they actually have a project that they're involved with. and I'll talk more about membership in a moment. And of course, this exercise is one that we'd like to repeat. You know, the approach that we've taken to date, we're about 18 months into the supercluster now. And so I'll talk a little bit about our portfolio projects that we have already, and a quick snapshot when we ended the year, March 31st, as to what that looks like. But the goal is for organizations to participate in as many projects as makes sense for them, and to continue to repeat on their success model. So just to give a snapshot of some of the members that are part of the supercluster today, you'll see them kind of shown on the right-hand side. I realize now I should probably hide this screen since you all see, there you go. And you know, and I know some of our members that you see on the logos on the right are actually with us today. So just to call out a few names, I think we have folks from AMPT, we have folks from MDA, we have, I think Tim's here from Lamazoo, Carl's here from Genexus. We got some folks from Joule and Microsoft. I think Val's here from Providence. We have folks from the BC government, which is one of our founding members, Earthcast. And if I've missed your name, I just want to thank all of our members for joining on this call and really making the supercluster possible. You know, the important aspect you'll see on the left is that the diversity of organizations that are part of the digital supercluster range from large and small companies, leaders in various vertical industries that are part of it. There are research institutes, there are not-for-profits, and of course we have government agencies and partners that are part of the supercluster as well. I see a little signal that my internet connection is unstable. Can I get a signal? Kaylee, can you just go off mute? Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thanks for that checkpoint. Okay. So with that, I think, you know, let me talk a little bit about the core areas of focus for us. So the program areas that we're focused on, and I'll talk about the 4 original program areas, and then I'll talk specifically about the COVID-19 program. So when we launched the supercluster, our intent with the idea that we could look at digital technologies that could be applied across industries and bring thematic change to some of the traditional industry sets that have long been the lifeblood of the economy here in Canada and in BC. So where we started from was to look at how we can support the digital transformation of companies in the natural resources industry, around healthcare, and around industrial, transportation, and infrastructure type of organizations. So that was our core focus, and we have applied to that various sort of digital technologies that range from data collection, data analytics, data visualization, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, blockchain technologies, cybersecurity, and the list goes on. Ultimately, when you bring those 2 elements together, that became the formation of how we designed our programs. And really, there's 3 program areas in what we call technology leadership, and then our program in capacity building. So on the bottom here, you'll see that we have a program stream specifically designed around precision health, and that is, as the nomenclature suggests, an attempt to build digital products and solutions that is going to provide the tailoring necessary to deliver the kind of outcomes that are precise to individual needs and to fundamentally change the future of healthcare for the better. I think in the digital twin side, there's a tremendous amount of effort being undertaken today to provide real-world replicas of digital replicas of physical objects and physical environments and physical processes. So digital twins is really a manifestation of creating the opportunity to do simulations at scale in all these industrial processes, whether it's mines, forests, factories, airports, manufacturing plants. That's really the opportunity, and I should say also hospitals. The third area of our technology leadership program is around data commons. And for everyone on the call that is is in the technology area. There's probably a wide recognition that over the last 20 years, there's been a tremendous amount of data that's been generated as a result of not only the consumer internet, but the industrial internet and the emergence of Internet of Things. And as there is more and more capabilities around these data repositories, what we're finding is that we're not able to make use of the information there. And so the data commons stream is intended to provide the necessary infrastructure to try to bridge data into intelligence, data into usable means to help companies and organizations really take advantage of that. And then the capacity building program is really the program that underlies all of the efforts that we are undertaking as a supercluster in extending what is being built out to the betterment of the broader ecosystem. So these are projects intended to create capacity in terms of digital skills, in terms of ensuring that the next generation of required skill sets for the digital economy are put in place. It's to include many segments of the population who up until now are probably not as included as we'd like to around the digital technology areas. So underrepresented groups, in indigenous groups, women in technology, and some of those other folks that that can really benefit from a much more pronounced involvement in these sorts of opportunities. So that's our 4 program areas that had formed the foundation of the supercluster up until now. And just to give a quick snapshot as we sort of look at the investment, one thing I should mention is that the overall intent of the supercluster is to invest dollars to leverage industry investments to really make for bigger outcomes. And it's both in the ambition of the projects through multiple collaboration partners, but also the injection of funds contributed by the Government of Canada as part of the supercluster program. So as we have it today, we expect that the total fund investments over 5 years, starting from 2018 until 2023, will be $300 million, half of which is coming from the Government of Canada, the other half of which is actually industry investments that are being made by companies small and large in various forms, in cash and in kind, in order to propel these projects to success. So as of March 31st, you can see that the numbers there, that we're about 1/3 of the way in terms of the overall investment commitments. We have committed a little over $43 million into projects across these different program areas. And as of today, we have 28 projects in the investment portfolio across the 4 program areas that I mentioned a little earlier. Now, maybe what I can do is just take a pause here and see if there are any questions before I talk about the COVID-19 program. I'll just stop sharing for a moment so that I can see if there are questions on the queue.
Hi, Bill. There is one that came in from Dave Brown, and I'm sure that you'll answer this in your address through the program website. But Dave asks, assuming that one has been completed, how many rounds of COVID specific funding are expected to be considered or allocated?
How many rounds of COVID? Sorry, I'm not able to see the question. Can you repeat the last part of it? How many
rounds of COVID specific funding are expected to be considered or allocated?
Okay, so that's a good segue into our COVID program. So why don't I address that as part of this? Thanks for that question. The COVID program itself was something, obviously, in the current situation, we tried to rally quickly towards building something which we launched in the latter part of March. So we were able to turn this around in about 7 days. But the intention there was to allocate $60 million from our investment fund towards the support of COVID-19 response projects. To your question, the intention here is to run through as many selection exercises as we can until we run out of the 60 million. And so we're still fairly early in that exercise, having just started that at the end of March, and there's still room and runway to continue to provide project submissions. I will say, though, that the enthusiasm and response from the community has been phenomenal. I think for the first time we've seen, and I think this is a testament to how everyone in Canada has responded to this crisis. It has been challenging for everyone, but at the same time, I think we've seen the emergence of so much goodwill that's come out on this, and the intention of so many to offer a hand in this time. Projects submitted through, and I'll walk through sort of how this works. But on our website, you'll see about and ultimately what we're projects that are designed to really the response to COVID-19. And there's a guide that you can read through. In essence, the program guides characteristics in terms of projects, evaluate projects, and also a census to how the steps work through in how we evaluate as well. It is a continuous process. So in other words, as people are putting in project ideas, we have a team of people devoted to looking at them, working with those groups, and ultimately inviting the ones that make the most sense into a full proposal stage. We have shortened the process from our traditional track. So for those members and associates who have been involved with us on other projects before, this is a more accelerated approach to it, and in so doing, it allows us to be more responsive to the needs of the current situation. The evaluation process, once those are actually submitted, we have weekly review sessions of those projects that have gone through a full proposal. We have an external review committee that actually is comprised of experts from a variety of different disciplines. They are on our website. I won't go through their names, but we did rely on the fact that we needed a multiplicity of expertise to evaluate the nature of the projects that we are considering on this. There is also a co-investment guidelines, which, you know, on our website, if you click through, we'll set out sort of the range and the expectations around how we co-invest. It's a little different than what we've done in our traditional programs. For the most part, in our traditional programs, we needed to get to a match level between how much we put in, how much the industry was putting in. In fact, you'll hear the number 43% as the number that we typically invest into projects for our traditional streams. For the COVID-19 program, because of the situation, we've been afforded more flexibility on that one. And as a result, we can fund anywhere from 50% all the way up to, in select cases, up to 100% of the cost of the project. And there is a town hall and Q&A video from the last time we did this about 3 weeks ago. And as you can see, there's a project submission form that you can enter in. And there are 5, actually I'll say 6 focus areas. Health system projects, which is really designed to support the needs of the current environment around things like virtual health, the kinds of systems that support our healthcare operations, hospitals, and healthcare workers themselves. There's a whole bucket of projects around community health, which deals with not only the aspects of mental health, but also support for things like necessities and the community, the in which we live. Therapeutics, which is really about how digital technologies can be used to accelerate the discovery of new capabilities in diagnosing or treating those with COVID-19. Emergency response category that really deals with, from a situational awareness perspective, what are the tools and digital technologies that can be applied to really kind of manage not only the response today, but eventually the response as we need to return people back into work environments and a return to the economy. And then a bucket for other big ideas. So the other contributions being that part. So what I might do at this point is I'll stop sharing and take questions at this point that may arise on the COVID-19 or anything else that we've talked about so far.
To confirm, Bill, there are no on the group chat in the queue, but if anyone else wants to unmute their line and has a question, please feel free.
Okay, I see that I was cutting out. So was there anything that I missed, Kaylee, that I need to go back on?
No, I think you're good, Bill. I think you covered it in later on in the
Okay,
section.
all
All
right.
good.
Okay, fantastic. So if there aren't any questions at this point, what I might do is just call upon some of our members who have been part of this journey so far, because I think we have a strong belief in the notion of paying it forward. So for those who have the experience in having worked on projects in the past, this is your opportunity to not only shine, but also to pass along some wisdom to those that would seek to be more involved with us. So in no particular order, Matt Murdoch, if I could maybe just ask you to say a few words on behalf of Earthcast on what you found was maybe some of the tips to succeeding in working in the context of the supercluster.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, that's
Cool.
great, Matt.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Matt Murdoch. I've been at Earthcast for about 3 years. I'm a program manager there, and I've been involved since almost the beginning. And so we have a project called the Earth Data Store in Cycle 1, and we're also working on another one that will be under contract soon as part of Cycle 3. I guess the tips I have is I think building a strong consortium. It does take a bit of work to find the right partners to get a successful project. But I think as you build those relationships and what I've found is like a group of 5 to 7 members is kind of around the sweet spot as far as just management of numbers. That's just my personal opinion. So we've just built these good relationships over time. And so our first project, we're working with a couple universities and some different industry partners. So which includes Microsoft, UVic, UBC, another SME called SparkGeo. And we've just, I think it's just been easy to work together. And we're kind of tagging on top of that on our next project and just, taking that momentum forward. It's been fairly straightforward. I'm very happy to see that the process has improved and streamlined, as we've gone through. The first one was a little bit more work for us, but it's gotten much more streamlined as the supercluster has evolved. So I think that's it for me. Unless you want me
Thanks,
to say
Matt.
words about the actual project itself.
If people have questions about it, we'll
Okay.
certainly invite people to ask if that's a good topic. So thank you very much, Matt, for that. And I know, Carl, you're on the line as well, and on behalf so far. Carl, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I also have an unstable connection sign coming up, but if you can hear me, I'm happy to talk.
You can. Thanks, Carl.
Good. So my view on the supercluster is that there's really 3 core benefits. The first is that it brings you, and in the case of Genexus, a small company, into a partnership onto the radar of a large company that you may otherwise never get in front of. So that's been a real benefit from us. Genexus, by the way, is involved in the Cycle 1 project in tailored health on pharmacogenetics. We were involved right from the very outset, so we're really blazing the trail for a lot of the processes and documentation that companies after us were able to use. The second benefit is that it provides an economically advantageous model to do research, R&D, innovation work that you may struggle to otherwise do. And the third key benefit, also from an R&D perspective, is that it allows follow-on innovations, not just from a product perspective, but also from a commercialization perspective. Because you got to go into these projects with the view that at some point you're going to want to commercialize this and make it applicable and relevant to the wider community and to make a viable business business out of it. Like Matt said, some of the tips, you're going to have to align yourself with your partners in the consortium that are very different in size to you, that have very different levels of resources, that have different strategic goals. And as a smaller player, you kind of have to have your elbows up a little bit and make sure you're heard at the table. And the way that the supercluster has structured the consortiums and the projects is that really each company in that consortium has an equal voice. So make sure you use it. And I guess the final thing I'll say is that the supercluster itself, and Bill and his colleagues, there is a wealth of expertise in that group, and don't be shy to call them up and say, hey, can you help us with some thinking on this, that, or the other? They're a great group of people, really approachable, and they're happy to get involved and happy to help. So that's all I've got to say, Bill, unless you would like me to continue on for another 20 minutes.
That was fantastic, Carl. Love you too, man. No, I think Carl had a couple of really important things there, and hopefully there'll be some questions along the way. But the intention on the supercluster model is to build bridges to a commercial outcome. And so by design, every supercluster project has on the endpoint sort of a sponsoring industry partner that ultimately would be the reference case for how the technology is going to be deployed. That's really important for everyone who's been in R&D for a while. There's lots of funding mechanisms to allow you to do research and development, but not necessarily tied to an end outcome where you've got a customer on that endpoint. The second thing I think that Carl mentioned is quite important, is that the diversity of players that we've got is a balancing act when it comes down to the project consortium. And as Matt said, part of the exercise is to connect with lots of different groups to build the trust and foundation. But the structure of our agreements is set up in a way that ensures that everyone has an equal voice, that we can level the playing field. Small companies, large companies all come into it with a common set of understanding. And oftentimes, I think our early experience on it was that we could play a bit of an arbitrator and a moderator role in what has ostensibly been sort of a different balancing point in those relationships. And I think that's been quite important. So thank you both, Carl and Matt, for those words. I was looking, Al was still on the line, but I don't see her here. So unless she is, Val, are you on this call? No, it doesn't look that way. Okay, so maybe with that, Kaylee, if I can turn back to any questions that have been posed.
No, there have been none that have been submitted through the group chat.
Well, that's fantastic. That says that you guys know everything that you need to know. I was looking for Carson, who was going to join us from the Protein Innovation Supercluster, but I don't see him on here because I would have asked him to share some wisdom from what they're seeing in the prairies. But I know we've got people from across the country, and it's probably late for a lot of people that are signing on from the East Coast. So if you have any questions as a follow-up, please feel free to email me directly. My email is btam@digitalsupercluster.ca. And maybe Kaylee, if you want to take us to the final pieces.
Absolutely. Just to echo Bill, thank you for everyone who joined today's call. As a reminder, the call was recorded and we will be sending out a playback as well as answers to some of the questions that came up. In regards to the COVID-19 program, just to make sure that you all please check out our website regularly, as we will be updating content as it comes in and as necessary. And if you have any questions, as well, I know Bill had mentioned to email him directly, but you can also email us at info@digitalsupercluster.ca. And once again, just thank you all for joining. And for those that I haven't met yet, I look forward to connecting with you. And I wish you and your families a safe and healthy week ahead.